Yeah, because it seems to, well, with some of the more mobile technologies, I think work is becoming a bit more seamless, actually, because you can be contacted anytime, anywhere. You can work whilst you're on your commute, you can work whilst you're travelling somewhere. You perhaps don't get the same break from work, actually, in some respects. Now, this can be a good thing in some ways. Like, I was involved in a study where we did some work looking at people commuting and travelling for business on trains in the UK. And we actually found that many people found that in the past they maybe wouldn't have been able to use this, what we might call dead time, you know, when you're waiting for a train or, you know, while you're on a train even. And that could have been quite frustrating. You lose valuable time. Whereas now you can use that. And that can be quite helpful because some of the people we talked to said that being able to use some of these little small snippets of time can actually help you manage your work-life balance better, because it means then when you get home, you don't have to do that work now because you've done it on your commute, or you've done it while you've been waiting for a doctor's appointment or whatever it might be. So it can be very useful. The downside is that that can then extend into your home life, and so it can be quite difficult to know when to switch off, because the boss might still be emailing you at 10 o'clock at night expecting an answer. So, you know, that intrusiveness can be quite difficult. So I think it can have an impact on people's work-life balance, and it can make people's work lives more extended, should we say, because there's a greater capacity or there's a greater likelihood perhaps that some types of business anyway, you're likely to work more extended hours because of this technology. So I think that's one way that it can impact on how work is organised.
Okay, and I mean another area that we're interested in is the impact of technology on the design of individual jobs, and you've talked quite a bit about aspects of that already.
Yeah.
But do you see any, you know, general trends there or things that people should look out for?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to predict where technology is going in the future, and I guess your students would probably know more about that than me. However, I think, like you say, I hinted at it a little bit before. I think some of these more modern technologies are creating an intensification of work and making some aspects more complex. It's giving people more demands that they're having to deal with. And so I think that anything that can be done to sort of help people to deal with those demands, and there may be technological solutions to help people with that. Other aspects might be more individual solutions, such as creating a boundary between home and work, or perhaps organisational solutions in terms of some of the policies and the expectations that people have within organisations. So there might be, you know, interventions in a sense that you can make at all of those different levels to try and, you know, change that for people really. But so, yeah, so I think there can be an intensification of work. And like I say, in other respects, there could also be a simplification of work where technology might take away some of the more interesting aspects of work. So I think when you're designing technology, you need to be really mindful of that. What is the operator going to be doing? You know, are they just going to be sat there mindlessly trying to, you know, monitor this technology, and are they going to be losing attention, you know, or are we going to give them something more active to do? Because if you give them something more active to do, they're much more likely to remain engaged, be more motivated, less likely to have errors, for instance, because that's the problem. If you're getting people just to monitor some technology, is that, you know, they lose concentration, errors occur, etc. So you need to think very carefully, I think, about what it is the person's going to be doing with that technology.
That makes sense. So, do you think that technology is impacting the relationship between management and employees? You know, the traditional manager-employee relationship. Is it in any way changing now, do you think?
Well, I think it's quite interesting because actually one of the blockages to people becoming more virtual in their work is the management, because often the management will not let go of this, you know, usual thing of, you know, seeing people in the office because that's the way managers usually manage. They're much more used to sort of managing by walking around and actually observing what people are doing. So oftentimes you find that it's the managers who are saying, no, we're not going to let people work from home because they don't trust them, to be working if they're not observing them. So there's that initial thing that actually, if you've got a manager with that sort of attitude, they're probably not having very many virtual workers anyway. The managers who let their workers work in that way are probably the better managers anyhow. And so therefore, they tend to maintain better relationships even virtually, because they're the ones who would really take the time to make sure they keep up the phone calls, keep up the contact, and all of those types of things that you need to do. Because there is a danger, isn't there? If you don't do that, relationships could slide. People could feel isolated. They don't think you care. They think you don't know what they're doing. Whereas I think the problem with technology is that it does require more effort. So if you're doing things virtually, you need to be much more explicit, much more effortful in how you maintain those relationships. Good managers will do that anyway, because they always did that. The challenge is for those managers who weren't very good and who didn't really want their, employees to go remote. Those are the people, in a sense, that we kind of have the biggest problem with, and we've got to try and get them to change the way that they do things, monitor people by results instead of monitoring, their mouse clicks or whatever it might be, because that doesn't really tell you very much about what work they're doing. You actually need to see the quality of the output. So I think there's something about the different mindsets. There's two different types of managers, some who manage by trust anyway, and for them, the move to virtuality is less of an issue, I think. They still have to put effort in and, they still have to manage it, but it's easier. For those who don't manage by trust and who manage it by observing, it's a much bigger challenge. And I think it's there that we kind of have to do a lot more work.
Very interesting. I mean, we've been looking in the course at different approaches to management from managers, starting with McGregor's Theory X and Theory Y and moving on from that. And your comments fit within that, really.
Yes.
Different managers take different approaches. And
they do, yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, the next question I've got is, in the future, you've talked about how you're not really sure about what technology is going to do in the future, and neither, of course, am I, and probably neither is anybody else. Do you think, people, when they work in the future, the students that are in the classroom now that might be watching this video, they'll have seen their parents go out to work, and they'll have seen the types of things they did in their jobs and what the general nature of employment was. Do you think in the future the students today who are graduating, is their life going to be different? Do you have any sense of what that might be? Or maybe you don't, that's okay.
Well, I think it depends